All right, so let's do some examples of completing this square. Okay, so instructions for this would say solve by complete the square. Okay, so how do I complete the square? Okay, so first things first, we get that x is on one side and everything else to the other. So I've got x squared plus 4x is 5. And then what? Throw in a couple blanks.
And then you want to divide 4 by 2?
Okay, so then I want to think to myself, okay, this guy, right? I want to think about this as something squared, right? It's going to be x plus something, 2. That's taking this number here and dividing by 2. It's always divide by 2. And then how do I fill in the purple blanks?
You multiply by itself.
Okay, so I square. So I'll get 4. Okay, now what should I do to check? Yeah, really, I should probably FOIL this thing out. If I FOIL this out, I'll get that. So I get x plus 2 squared is 9. Okay, now I can extract the roots, right? So what do I do to both sides?
Plus or minus square root.
Okay, so we apply plus minus square root. So I get x plus 2 is
Plus or minus 3.
plus or minus 3. And then what?
Then you subtract 2 also.
Okay, so I subtract 2 from both sides. So I've got x is, leave the plus or minus in there for a second.
Oh, sorry.
Plus minus 3 minus 2, right? So that means that x is
Negative 5.
negative 5
Or 1.
or x is 4. You guys cool with it? We do another one?
Yeah.
Okay.
You said you're always dividing by 2 and timesing by 2? No.
Always dividing by 2 and then squaring.
Multiply by
Oh.
that would be 3.
Just works out like this.
Yeah, and that one it just happened to work out. 2 is a funny number. All right, so first steps first. What do I do?
Get the 8 to the other side. Get
Okay. So I subtract 8. So now I've got x squared minus 6x plus blank is minus 8 plus blank. How do I fill in the blank? What do I think? So this is going to be x negative 3. Okay, what do I fill in the blanks with? Plus 9 and plus 9. So then x minus 3 squared is what? 1. You guys all see that? Okay, so then what? Okay, so at this point we're done completing the square, and now we're playing extraction of roots, right?
I have one question.
Yeah.
What's the point of putting the 9 with the 6x plus?
Yeah, why am I filling that blank with a 9?
Yeah, like why?
Because I'm really thinking, okay, I had x squared minus 6x, and I'd like to think about this whole side as a perfect square trinomial. It doesn't initially have anything there, right? So I can't think about it as something squared, because it's not. So I have to fill that blank with something so that it's something squared. Okay, so to extract the roots, I
Plus or minus square root of both.
plus minus square root both sides. So I get x minus 3 is
Plus or minus 1.
plus or minus
One.
square root of 1 is 1. Okay, now what?
And you add 3 to both sides.
Okay. So we get x is
3 plus or minus 1.
3 plus or minus 1 gives me x is
4.
4.
Or x is 2.
4, or x is 2. Cool. We should talk about when this doesn't work. When isn't this technique going to work?
Well, we can do prime stuff and after we have this.
Yeah, this actually lets you do prime stuff. But it doesn't let us do what's been special about the ones I've done.
They all have like a perfect, like you can always square it, right?
This piece, right? Yeah, A's been 1. If A isn't 1, the first thing you have to do is divide by A to get A equals 1. This technique doesn't work if A is not 1. Okay? What else could be a problem with this technique? This one is an example to highlight.
There's a 1.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if there's another variable, you're totally screwed. This technique's not going to work. Okay. How's this for an example? Okay, here's an example where the A term wasn't 1, or the A coefficient wasn't 1. So what do I do with this? Okay, first things first, we got to get it to 1. So we divide by 4. So we got x squared minus 2x minus 2 equals 0. Okay, so then what? Yeah, now this is just complete the square like usual, right? Okay, so we add 2 to both sides. So we got x squared minus 2x plus blank is 2 plus blank. Okay, so this is going to be x what? Minus 1 squared. So that means I should fill the blank in with a negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1, right? Fill it in with a plus 1. Okay, so I'll get 3. So I got x minus 1 squared is 3. So what do I do with both sides?
You square root it, but then you just get like the square root of 3.
Okay, so this is this a problem or an inconvenience?
I think it's just an inconvenience, right?
Okay, see that? This is not actually broken, it's just inconvenient. So if I've got x minus 1 is plus or minus the square root of 3, what would break that?
By squaring it?
So when I was square rooting, right, what would be not inconvenient but broken to try a square root?
0. Well,
0 is easy, actually.
Okay.
Square root of 0 is 0. But what do I multiply by itself to get a negative number? See, if I multiply a negative times a negative, it comes out positive, right? If I multiply a positive times a positive, it comes out positive. So there isn't going to be something I can multiply by itself to get a negative, right? So if I try to square root a negative number, this isn't going to be inconvenient. It's going to actually be broken. You guys see that? So that's another thing that could go wrong. If I did my completing the square and the right-hand side was negative, I would have to write something like, whoops, there aren't any x's like that, or something. cool. So this one, inconvenient, not broken. Had it been a negative, broken. What do I do to both sides at this point?
Add 1.
Add 1. So I've got x is
Plus or minus the square root of 3 plus 1. Or, yeah.
plus minus root 3 plus 1. Tells me that x is,
Plus, is it plus or minus the square root of 4? Or, no.
square roots don't work that way, you're stuck.
So it's just plus or
Square
minus
root of
the
3
square
is just a number, so you got 1 plus the square root of 3, or x is 1 minus the square root of 3. Square root of 3 is a number. If you plug it in your calculator and get square root of 3 is something, what are you losing? Losing a hard equal sign, right? Right, because you're getting an approximation for it. Okay, so when the a is not 1, we can divide through by it, hopefully. Hopefully it's easy to divide through by it. You guys want to see the other thing that can happen? Yeah. Right? So what should I do?
Try to get 15 over 4 to the other side. Add.
Okay. So why don't I want to multiply the whole thing by 4?
You have to divide it by 4.
Yeah, because I've got to have a equals 1 for this completing the square technique to work, right? So actually, if I had a 4x squared minus 4x minus 15 was 0, the first thing I would do is divide by 4 anyway. This fraction is a small price to pay for having a technique, right? If I don't have this fraction here, I definitely don't have a technique that's going to work. So I got to get the number to the other side, right? So I just add 15 quarters. Yeah, it's a messy number, but who cares? So what am I left with though?
X squared minus x equals 15 quarters.
Okay, so,
But, yeah.
and I should put some blanks in there, right? Because I'm trying to complete the square. Okay, so I should now think about this as x something squared, right? Okay, how do I get the something?
You divide by 2 and then multiply by itself.
Divide the coefficient by 2, right? So what's the coefficient on x?
1? Negative 1?
Negative 1, so I put in here a,
Is it negative 1 over 2?
yeah, it's got to be a fraction. So what am I learning?
That's
That when the b term isn't divisible by 2, right? That my technique is going to be messier. I would advise actually against using complete the square for these. Okay. What do I do with this?
multiply by itself.
Multiply it by itself and put it in the blanks, right? So this is,
1.
it's negative a half times negative a half.
Negative 1. Oh, no, it's 1. Wait.
It's positive.
Yeah, it's positive 1.
It's not positive 1.
What?
That's negative a half plus negative a half, right?
Negative 4.
Yeah, it's not negative though. Positive a quarter.
Oh, hey, but the bases match up at least.
Yeah, and the bottoms match up because this problem was carefully orchestrated. So what's 15 plus 1 quarters? 16 quarters, which is 4. Okay, now how do I solve? Yeah, this is the same root extraction, right? So what do I do to both sides? Plus minus the square root. Okay, so I'll get x minus a half is plus or minus 2. Then what? Add the half to both sides. So I get x is a half plus or minus 2. Okay, so x is x is 2 plus 1/2, or x is 2 minus 1/2. So I should probably get better numbers for those. What's 2 plus a half?
2.5.
I yelled at you guys not to use mixed numbers at the beginning, didn't I? How many halves is 2 things? 4. So 4 halves and 2 more, and 1 more is 5 halves.
I know, I'm stuck in the game.
We shouldn't be struggling with this.
No, you shouldn't be. Or what's 2 minus a half as halves? 1.5 is how many halves? 3 halves.
The test should be on mixed numbers.
Yeah. It'll be the hardest thing ever.
Cool. So what did we learn? What were our warnings about complete the square?
If our b term isn't like divisible by 2, it's going to be like
It will.
yeah, it will be.
Okay, so warnings for complete the square were A must be 1, right? And
If B is 1, will be half.
yeah, B should probably be divisible by 2
Yeah.
for convenience, right? So maybe this should be A has to be 1, and our second warning should be like, if B isn't even, then life is going to be hard. Then this is fractiony and hard. Cool? Not impossible, but hard. Cool? Alright, so that's completing the square for you.